Well, I hope you enjoyed our kickoff to Funny Week here on Dialing for Dollars with Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon starring in The Odd Couple. We'll keep the ball rolling with laughs tomorrow as we present Joe Namath and Glenn Campbell starring in Norwood. It should be a funny movie, so I hope you'll join me at 4. And, of course, we'll have cash calls in our Super G race. Now stay tuned for Newswatch 16.
Glenn Campbell and Joe Namath star in Norwood tomorrow.
Good evening. The winter white is the news. Snow was predicted last night, but few expected what we got. Although 4.5 inches fell in the Wilkes-Barre Scranton International Airport, nearly a foot fell in other parts of northeastern Pennsylvania. Of the few schools that were not closed for the president's holiday, most were forced to close because of the snow. But by midday, most streets have been cleared and things are back to normal again. Traffic was moving smoothly along the northeast extension of the turnpike in this area today, but turnpike officials were asking people to stay off anyway. The problem is further south, where multiple vehicle accidents were common. One such accident closed the southbound lane for several hours. Traffic is moving on the northeast extension tonight.
This is the news station, WNEP 16.
Good evening. Although temperatures are on the rise, frozen water pipes continue to plague many people this evening. Pennsylvania Gas and Water has been kept busy with calls for help, but Newswatch 16's Bob Absher says customers of small water companies may be those who are really struggling.
This was the scene last Monday as crews for the private water company repaired a frozen and broken main water line for Hawley. Hundreds of customers were without water for several days.
1 week later, the water's flowing through the pipes. Everybody in Hawley has water. But a Public Utility Commission spokesman down in Harrisburg told me there can be no guarantees that what happened here last week will not happen again. And that PUC spokesman says there can be no guarantees that it won't happen elsewhere. That same PUC spokesman calls small private water companies a real headache for the state at times. Customers complain about alleged irregular service. But really, as he puts it, the small private water company operator has simply been swamped by inflation.
Many of the 325 private water companies in the state are small, similar to the Hawley Water Company. The PUC says if something goes wrong, they don't have a warehouse of parts and dozens of crews. The irritation is felt in the home because water is one of those things we take for granted and expect to be there when we need it. According to the PUC, there is a vicious circle. Customers complain about service, but while the complaints pile up, the water companies are forced to seek higher rates in an attempt to deal with the problems. The PUC sees two possible answers: creation of water authorities in a region, which could be expensive, or allowing large water companies, such as PG&W, to take on the small companies as satellite operations. Neither idea has caught on, but the Public Utilities Commission spokesman says the answer may have to be faced someday in the future, as small water companies go the way of the corner grocery, wiped out by the economics of business. Bob Absher, Newswatch 16, Hawley.
In addition to the water problem, the sustained cold snap has created a very real danger of frostbite. Newswatch 16's Bob Carroll says it's very important to dress properly for the weather.
Cases of extreme exposure during the weekend cost 4 men their lives, including one University of Scranton student who apparently slipped into the gorge at Naog Park and froze in the water below. For normal everyday activity in the cold weather, some simple precautions should be taken. Dr. Peter Corry is director of the Department of Surgery at Wilkes-Barre's General Hospital.
Above all, they should wear adequate clothing when they go out. And it is important to protect the farthermost parts of their body, their feet, their hands, their nose, and their ears. These are the parts that seem to be bothered by frostbite the quickest.
Dr. Corry said the real danger point is once a person gets past the shivering stage during exposure and begins to feel sleepy. He said if an exposed individual falls asleep, death could come in 2 or 3 hours.
Those people who are exposed generally over their entire body to cold will initially feel cold and shiver, and then they gradually, as their temperature drops, they begin to develop a sense of warmth and become quite sleepy. And at this stage, they are entering a coma and they don't know it.
Continued anesthesia, that is a lack of feeling, and whiteness are danger signals in the extremities, the ears, the nose, the hands, or the feet. Medical attention should be sought immediately. Bob Carroll, Newswatch 16, Wilkes-Barre.
The problems in Scranton didn't arrive with the cold weather, but it's not helping matters. Madaline Fitzgerald is in our newsroom in the Lackawanna Junior College building with the details. Maddie?
Liz, we may be cursing this cold spell, but several families along Woodlawn Street in Scranton are praying it lasts forever. The reason? With the warm weather, those families can expect their homes to cave in. The problem began 6 weeks ago when a weak spot in a mine tunnel caved in and took along with it the basement of this home owned by the Montero family. City inspectors declared the house unsafe and moved the Monteros out. And since the family had no insurance, the city even offered to fill the hole in free of charge. But the Monteros have refused to sign the necessary papers. No one knows why. The hole has since enlarged and is now within 3 feet of the neighbors' foundations. Engineers say as long as the ground stays frozen, there's little danger. But as soon as the thaw comes, that hole will spread and other homes could cave in too. The Monteros cannot be reached for comment. City inspectors say repeated attempts to get the family to sign the release have failed. No one knows why the family won't sign or why they've placed their neighbors' homes in jeopardy. Other abandoned Scranton buildings are causing big trouble. They are the vacant schools. The fire department claims the schools are fire traps too easily accessible to vandals and should be boarded up. Officials are worried the kids may try to warm up inside during the cold weather and start fires in the schools. 3 letters have been sent to the school district, one just 10 days ago asking it to comply and board the windows up. So far, however, only a couple of schools have been boarded. Others, like the Garfield School on Pittston Avenue, remain open and dangerous. Gary?
Thank you, Maddie. Next for you on Newswatch 16, fire, a masked robbery, and Jay forecasting outside.
You don't believe this. I got a ticket with me. Look, Norwood, if only our old drill sergeant could see you now. Oh, it's good.
Norwood is Tuesday's big Dialing for Dollars movie on wnep-tv, Channel 16.
Down home, where smiling faces shine like the morning dew. My fondest memories lie here. I was born here and I'll die here with my heart full of happiness.
Joe Namath, Kim Darby, and Glenn Campbell star in Norwood. See it tomorrow at 4 on wnep-tv, Channel 16.
The snow did little to cover the destruction caused by a fire in Pottsville late last night. A double-block home in the 200 block of Schuylkill Avenue was destroyed. At the height of the fire, the flames leaped across an adjoining alley, doing heavy damage to a 3-family apartment building. The owner of the first building told Newswatch 16 it appeared the fire started in the basement of his home. All those inside the 2 homes, a total of 7, escaped without injury. At one point, the heat of the fire was enough to do damage to a home across Schuylkill Avenue. At least they dressed the part. Police say 2 men wearing ski masks took $50,000 from the concessionaire for the Elk Mountain Ski Center. William Farber says he was making a night deposit at this bank in Simpson when he was robbed. Simpson police say the thieves wore ski masks but didn't attempt a getaway on skis. They chose their victim's car instead. The bandits who grabbed the $50,000 in weekend receipts apparently changed cars 2 blocks away from the Simpson bank.
Aside from the tragedy and the hassles, for some, the snow couldn't have fallen at a better time. A holiday off in Old Forge with a local hill right there. It was really living today in Old Forge. Outside in his kind of weather, Jay Kristopher.
Oh, let me tell you, Gary, It seems like a heat wave in the backyard, and I guess we have to praise the Lord for sending us some mild weather or mild air weather. To give you some idea of what kind of accumulations occurred south of the metro area, Philadelphia 13, Norristown 14, Harrisburg 14, Coatesville had 18 inches of snow, Doylestown 16.5, Washington, D.C., they're having a ball, 23 inches fell there, and Baltimore, Maryland, 22 inches. So most of the snowfall well south of us, all from this low pressure system now off the Delmarva Peninsula and about 300 miles out in the Atlantic Ocean, and is no longer any threat to landfall here. The high in Kentucky will ensure for us a sterling day tomorrow. We'll get back into a southwesterly flow of air. This low pressure in southern Nevada will track toward the northeast, the Midwest area, and we may have some rain, sleet, and snow probably about Wednesday. A little early to tell, but that's the projection off the computers. But we will have a beautiful day tomorrow from that high in Kentucky. On Skywarn Radar, following a look at the satellite weather map, we have a good governor waiting for us also. However, we'll forget about the satellite weather map and bring you up to date on the Skywarn Radar. 60 nautical mile scan earlier this morning. If you were with Good Morning America, you saw a lot of precipitation well south of us. On the 150 nautical mile scan, the storm is now history, well off on the coast, and is not doing any kind of damage or any precipitating down in the southern areas, that is south of the metro. Clear and cold tonight. There may be some variably cloudy skies toward Elmira, but temperatures a little more bearable. We're forecasting a +5 in Wilkes-Barre, New Milford 0, Pottsville 4, Hazleton 4, Stroudsburg 8, and the Pocono Resorts at 1. For tomorrow, sunny and sterling day is the forecast, a high of 30. Believe that. 35 in Berwick, Williamsport 34, Sunbury 35, Allentown 36. That's more kind of, well, bearable weather, really. Clearing, a +5 degree reading in the metro tonight. It will be sunny and beautiful tomorrow, a high of 30. We'll increase the cloud cover on Wednesday as we're forecasting possibility of some rain, sleet, and snow from that southwesterly flow of air. And Thursday, a little carryover Thursday AM, and then Friday we'll get back into a clearing trend. But more importantly, as you look at the temperatures, they're more like wintertime that we like to have here in the Northeast. Air quality was in the green today, and thanks for sharing all this beautiful weather from Kristopher's bedecked backyard. Gary?
Thank you, Jay. At those warmer temperatures, it's almost like spring is about 73 days away.
I'm sorry you brought that up, Gary.
Next on Newswatch 16, a special investigative report on illegal toxic dumping here in our area.
Glenn Campbell and Joe Namath star in Norwood tomorrow.
Recently, Newswatch 16 cameras went undercover to film a dangerous practice that could affect your health or that of your children. It has to do with area landfills. For almost 3 months, WNEP-TV has been investigating the practice of dumping hazardous chemicals in northeastern Pennsylvania. What we found surprised even us. Tonight, Newswatch 16 will devote an entire segment of this show to this exclusive investigative report. The reporter is Ed Martelle.
The rumors have been around for years about what's being dumped in strip pits and landfills. But last summer and fall, we began to hear things that are more concrete. In March of 1978, the Department of Environmental Resources charged McAdoo Associates with dumping waste illegally in McAdoo. The hearing was held January 3rd of this year. The driver who had dumped the waste and McAdoo Associates were both found guilty on 2 counts each and were fined a total of $1,200. The company is appealing that conviction. The Sugarloaf landfill just west of Hazleton has been a subject of DER activity for 8 years. Toxic materials have been found on the property twice. On one of those occasions, the toxins were traced to a western Pennsylvania chemical company that had burned down. DER ordered the dangerous waste moved to where they were supposed to be dumped in the first place, a company in New Jersey with a permit and the equipment to process dangerous waste. The owner of Sugarloaf landfill denied knowing the chemicals were on his property. 2 others that DER have been watching are the Lackawanna Refuse Company in Scranton and the Northeastern Landfill in Old Forge. September 1st of last year, a cloud of gas came down the hill from the Old Forge landfill. It smelled like natural gas, so Pennsylvania Gas and Water Company was called. Their people could find no leak, and they reportedly suggested the smell might be coming from the landfill, a fact reflected in the Old Forge police report filed that night. The smell went away and hasn't happened again. But it started people in Old Forge wondering about what was up in the dump. In December, acting on a tip, 2 photographers and I staked out the yard at Lackawanna Refuse and the Northeastern Landfill. What we saw confirmed what we'd heard. A truck and trailer owned by S&W Waste of New Jersey drove into the Lackawanna refuse yard about 10 in the morning. As soon as it arrived, things in the yard started getting very busy. A loader began taking 55-gallon drums out of the trailer and loading them into refuse company roll-offs. Then the roll-offs headed out of the yard. Yeah, it's a red tipper. From there, the trucks would come up the North Scranton Expressway, come down Kaiser Avenue to Milwaukee Road, and wind up here at Northeastern Landfill, an old forge. That's where our cameras picked them up again. Once at the landfill, the first loads on the roll-offs were dumped. Despite what you were seeing, the owner of the landfill and Lackawanna Refuse, Peter Iacovazzi, told me he's never unloaded anything from an S&W truck. He also contended that he only dumps garbage in his landfill, not industrial wastes. But what came out of the barrels the day we took this film was a thin, clear liquid, not garbage. Later, we took 2 samples of liquid from 2 barrels left in the Lackawanna refuse yard. An analysis by the state lab showed that both contained 1 or more paint solvents. In sufficient quantities, DER officials say these solvents could pose a health hazard. Later, we returned to the refuse yard. The barrels were gone. The barrels we watched spill in the landfill were 55 gallons each, all of it going into a landfill meant for garbage only. Although the solvents we saw dumped here rate relatively low on the list of dangerous toxins, DER officials are concerned about other, more dangerous chemicals that may have been dumped here in northeastern Pennsylvania. DER knows these chemicals are coming into the state and the area in large quantities.
You're talking about stuff that in the milligram and the microgram range is deadly. You can pollute an extremely large water table with this type waste.
So we're talking about poisoning or maybe even killing large numbers of people.
That's correct. We can do that. The possibility is there, and it's very distinct that it could happen.
The question you ask at this point is, why isn't DER doing something if they know about millions of pounds of chemicals that are being dumped in northeastern Pennsylvania?
We don't have the manpower at the present time to do it, and we're not participating in a national program. We haven't accepted primacy in the act to do this job yet.
We've had calls from people living near these dumps. They can't understand why something can't be done. That problem also gnaws at people from DER.
You feel very frustrated.
Do you sleep at night?
Sometimes, and sometimes it's very restlessly I sleep.
The only bright spot in all this is that DER will probably be joining a federal program designed to keep track of the kinds of waste that are turning up here. The new DER Secretary, Cliff Jones, has made toxic waste one of his top priorities. But it will be summer before the state can get in gear with the federal system. Best that can be done right now is what is being done. DER is keeping a close watch on the landfills in northeastern Pennsylvania. Fred Carroll says someday there will be a slip-up and the illegal dumpers will be caught. But some ask, will that be soon enough? One person who hopes it will be is Old Forge Mayor Anthony Cristiano.
At the present time, I'm having our police department monitor everything that's going on to see if there are any irregularities up there, because this is a great concern to me and especially to all the citizens of our borough.
Thanks to the samples that we provided to DER, action is being readied on a number of fronts. Our samples already indicate to DER that the northeastern landfill is operating in violation of its permit. The Solid Waste Bureau of DER can fine Northeastern $300 for each truckload of toxic waste, or it can revoke Northeastern's permit to operate. The Water Quality Bureau of DER can fine the landfill $10,000 to $15,000 if it can determine that dangerous chemicals have gotten into streams or any part of the water table. And then there's the Environmental Protection Agency, federal people that can levy $3,000 in fines every day a load of dangerous chemicals didn't get to where it was supposed to go. All that's needed to set this into motion is a positive test of new chemical samples that we provided to DER and chemical samples that DER have taken for itself. At Martelle, Newswatch 16, Luzerne County.
The sports news next with Joe Zone on Newswatch 16.
Joe Namath, Kim Darby, and Glenn Campbell star in Norwood. See it tomorrow at 4 on wnep-tv, Channel 16.
Well, it's been a while since we've seen Joe Zone. Last we saw him is heading for Tucson. Welcome back.
John Glaw and I did get to Tucson. It was 60 degrees there. We only spent one day there, though.
You make us eat our hearts out, right?
Covering the Parkettes of Allentown. Big story for them, and I think I remember last Thursday, just before I left, I said I'd hoped I'd be back today with a story of 3 Parkettes finishing in the top 10, and that's exactly what I have.
The 35 best women gymnasts in the country were invited to this meet for the purpose of establishing a new national ranking. Heidi Anderson was the best of the Parkettes this time. She finished 4th. Sandy Worth, just 5/100ths of a point behind Heidi, was next at 5th. And GGM Bandos, despite a poor showing in the optionals, came in 9th. All 3 will represent the United States in various international meets during the next 3 months. It'll be Heidi's first time for international competition, but judging from her showing here, she'll be more than ready for the challenge. This was by far her best performance ever. And what's even more impressive about the 4th place finish was that after Thursday night's compulsories, she was in a rather precarious 9th position.
Like right on the borderline, it makes you nervous.
Did it put any extra pressure on you?
I just decided that I couldn't get any worse. I had to do better in optionals.
And you obviously did better. You came out with the floor exercise, and you end up with the highest of all the floor performances. Tell me a little bit about that, how it went for you.
Well, I was nervous for my double back. I haven't done that many times, but with the spring floor, and I'm sort of known for my height, it just helped me do the double back better. And I just tried my best on it. Heidi received a 9.55 for this floor routine, and no one did better than that.
Indeed, no one did better. And tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, we'll talk with Sandy Worth. She was the most consistent of the 3 girls, and the end result was her best over performance ever. Incidentally, next Sunday on NEP Events, we'll have the entire story of the Dial Invitational, and the first stop this year for the Parkettes on their way to what we all hope is the 1980 Olympics, and we'll be with them all the way. Lady Royals of the University of Scranton are on their way to postseason play. Today, though, home with Army, an exhibition game. They won 84-76. We'll have highlights tonight at 11 o'clock. And Kendall McNeil of Wilkes College proved to be the highlight for the Colonels last week. He averaged 28 points in 3 games. Along the way, he picked up his 1,000th career point. ECAC likes his act, and for the 5th time, he was named to the ECAC honor roll. Some of the kids we've been looking at on our weekly scouting report have visions of someday making the ECAC honor roll. Wyoming area's Billy Hoover was that kind of potential, as we find out in this week's scouting report.
I'd like to continue my education in the area, so like my fans and my mother and parents could come and see me.
Billy Hoover may get his wish. At 6'7", 210 pounds, he's the area's biggest big man, and he rates high on the recruiting list of King's College coach Ed Donahue.
Here's a real good one as far as his future goes. He already has the basic ingredient that's height, and he has size, and he has fairly good mobility, and I think he shows promise of being a good shooter. And I just feel this young man, with a lot of work, is going to be a very, very good college prospect. I would like very much to see him in a red and gold uniform next year.
Hoover has all the big man stats. He's leading the Wyoming Valley Conference with 23 points per game, and his 12 rebounds a game also ranks him near the top.
If there's only one guy you can have on this whole list of the seniors, Hoover's the guy you'd like to have.
Well, we definitely need a big man. That's one of our primary needs, and Hoover, as far as big people go, would be our primary choice.
Hoover, like most of the players in the area, will wait until after the season before he decides where he'll play his ball next season.
That's all of it. Give tonight your best shot. I'll be back at 11 o'clock with everything between now and then. See you then.
Thank you, Joe. See you then. We'll be back in a moment.